Before we kick it off, I just want to let everyone know that the Wildfire Ready Coalition, we're on a mission to offer these workshops on Zoom so that we can record them and post them up on our YouTube channel for anyone to watch at any time at their own convenience. So for us, it's less about how many folks actually join us during the workshop on Zoom and more about making sure that the information is available to people. So I'm still going to give it another minute. Okay, our time is here. I will go ahead and get started. I am Kristen Cook, known as KC. I head up the UBET Firewise community, and I have been working in the Firewise space for 7 years. And I also have been participating on a couple of national forums for wildfire communications. And I'm happy to be leading the conversation tonight on Firewise community communications and outreach. Obviously, that's one of the most critical functions of any Firewise community. So this is being recorded, and this is brought to us by the Wildfire Ready Coalition of Nevada County. So the focus on communications and outreach is not just to do it, to make it happen, but it's how we get to know our neighbors. It's how we connect with them and build relationships and thus build a wildfire ready community. So the way I'm going to make kind of talk about this evening is focusing on a couple of things. The first is getting to know your neighbors. Second is gathering people in an easy way and making sort of informal and formal meetups. Focus on a deep dive on what kind of work we can do together and what we've seen from a best practice perspective actually gets people to come out and engage. And then we're going to speak to messaging and some of how we talk about things, the assets that are available to Firewise leaders and the resources and agencies that we can lean on to help get our messages going. And last but not least, we want to talk a little bit about that notion of engagement and how we can step them into the Firewise community by breaking tasks down into smaller jobs. So I'm sure it's no surprise to anyone. It is very simple though, and a lot of the basics are start with your neighbors. A lot of times as Firewise leaders, we start thinking instantly about the actions that we need to do in terms of vegetation mitigation, roadside clearing, and all of the things that need to happen to make our communities more fire safe. The reality is it does need to start with the neighbors. And for new Firewise communities, it's super basic. We want to make sure that there's an understanding of who is where, and that's just basic contact information. So to start with, it's not complex. It's name, address, phone number, email. For the more seasoned Firewise communities, as I have over time started to realize, I need to know more than just who is where. I also need to know what tools they have, what needs they have, what some of the interconnectedness is. That becomes very powerful once you know who is friends with whom and things of that nature. Where I'm at right now with my Firewise community, you bet, we're starting to think about where are the water sources. We have a GMRS, General Mobile Radio Program, so where are those placed? So we're starting to look at matching up our assets to our people. From a how to join perspective, Firewise can do it anyway. If you're a smaller community, it might be a simple Excel spreadsheet. There are a lot of free contact systems you can use, like a MailChimp, and everybody kind of does it their own way, and that's okay. Some people just do it as a group text, maybe on WhatsApp. For me, we have a little system, and then we just put a QR code together so anyone can use their phone and then sign up for our mail list. So it's super easy that way. Knowing where people and their contact information is, there's not a single meeting I've been in where there isn't a map and someone just jumps up and says, well, I live here, and neighbors instantly start talking. So I always suggest that when you're building a contact list, that you partner that with maps. I have a giant You Bet map laminated. It goes to me with every single meeting, and every meeting gets used for a different purpose. So on the right is my community. It's very large. And within that, we have 20 different sections, which look similar to the Greater Dalmatian Firewise community on the left. What I like about the section on the left is you can see the individual parcels, and a lot of neighbors will actually, have that printed out, and they will have names of their neighbors written in there. They might number them and then have a list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or by address. So the map becomes a tool for people to really get to know each other, which in an emergency is really helpful. And then in terms of getting contact information, one of the most important things, and this is a picture from the Banner Mountain Firewise community that Mo Graber had put together, is having new neighbor welcome kits. I confess we haven't really succeeded in that yet here in UBET. Some individual neighborhoods are doing that, but I like it when I see this because it inspires me to think, yeah, there should be a kit. And what they've done is they have a one sheet around kind of the main contact information and resources for new neighbors. They also customize the map, showing them their immediate neighbors in a confidential way, and then a variety of handouts that come typically from Office of Emergency Services or CAL FIRE. So if you have someone who can do that outreach, that personal connection,
remember when we tried to put all that stuff in one, and it's like, no, the ready, set, go is enough. Our name and code, your.
Hi, did someone have a question or want to comment on that? Please go ahead. Or you're just chatting with your friends. Okay. Welcome. So the new neighbor welcome kit, and it doesn't have to be, comprehensive like this, but just a simple outreach to welcome neighbors to the community is a great way to start to get them engaged. So what we like to say is relationships come before action. People, they like to be invited, right? So they want to feel like they're welcome. And we have some folks that, will drive out and find a new neighbor and drag them out to some social event or something like that. But that's usually the way it works. It's not just joining Firewise unless they've come from another county where they've had a relationship with fire in a bad way, then they're super interested in Firewise. So you have to be kind of cognizant that it could go either way. However, we talk about neighborhood get-togethers, and it seems super straightforward. The reality is there are dozens of kinds of neighborhood get-togethers, and every community might have a whole different approach to it. So there's no right or wrong. It's around how does your community socialize? How does your community come out and meet with each other in a variety of ways? Whatever that is, that's what you want to build on. The Wildfire Ready Coalition does have a Firewise barbecue toolkit that's available for download for Firewise leaders. And it basically steps you through not how to run a barbecue. Everyone knows how to do that, but how to do it in a structured way that is still very subtle and has some Firewise talk tracks, which allow you either as a new leader or someone who's meeting with folks you've not met with before, just to, sort of soft pedal the idea of fire safety. And not make it, too overpowering. So however you guys, come together in groups, whether it's a formal setting like a backyard formal meeting, whether it's doing work together, the idea is really to create that sense of community and belonging. So when I said there were dozens of ways to come together, this is just a simple list of things that, ideas that folks can build on for their community. It doesn't have to be complicated, and it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. The whole bring a chair roadside meetups, we do that here in UBET. And during COVID, we had driveway happy hours. Everyone sat, 6 feet apart, 10 feet apart, and laughed and talked. So I think there's some real informal ways to do it. And I am going to share a little bit more of the formal opportunities as well. A couple caveats. The first is the formula: invite, feed, talk, follow up. The feed could be a potluck. It could be bring your own drink, bring a snack. That's it. That's the essence of it. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. You can certainly get very creative if you're talking about seasonal types of things, a community Easter egg hunt with defensible space tips inside the eggs, for example. But you don't have to, right? So I think that simple is good. And then the last thing is, as you're talking about relationship building, not every gathering has to be a meeting. Inevitably, when I go out and socialize with anybody out of UBET, I don't lead with anything, Firewise, even though it's what I think about a lot, but I make myself available and someone always wants to have that conversation and ask me some questions. So I think just showing up is half the battle.
Casey, Joanne wanted to mention that Mo's template that you were talking about, the kit, she's going to put
Yes.
that up on our Firewise best practices page.
Nice. Thank you, Joanne. So jumping right in, this is kind of, I think, a lot of the meat of it. Anytime that, the focus becomes something that you guys are going to do together and there's a goal and something to accomplish, people feel great when you come together and do something. So I'm going to talk about different kinds of work parties, and they're the twofer. Because yes, we're communicating and building relationships, but we're also getting work done on the ground. So the idea is that if you can structure something, and it could be super simple or super complex, like anything else, anytime a handful or a lot of neighbors come together, whether it's to do Scotch broom, whether it's to help one neighbor who either, can't do the work themselves, it's a visible way of saying, hey, look what we did. And there's a certain amount of pride that comes with that. And it starts to build that momentum because people like that experience. And the work parties can be, what we all talk about are the green waste, right? So it could be a road work party, or it could be a community green waste program with the bins. But they are a lot of work, but I have seen dozens of them over the last 7 years. And inevitably, people have exchanged phone numbers. They feel super proud of the work they've done. They stand back and look at what's been accomplished. And there's just an incredible amount of camaraderie that occurs with that. And what we're starting to see also is getting good fire on the ground is a similar kind of a thing with a work party. And it certainly, brings people in from a different perspective. I'm finding that the fire brings in a lot of the younger people who are interested in kind of bringing the land back to its natural state. They care about the land, they're concerned, and they want to embrace this idea of cultural burning. And so a work party around fire is another great way to reach out to and engage some folks that maybe wouldn't necessarily join. And dogs on the right. Dogs are always good. Dogs and kids, right? So from a work party perspective, it's pretty straightforward. This is not a comprehensive checklist. I just wanted to share kind of a top line that obviously there's some planning in advance that needs to happen. Some best practices throughout, the actual work party itself. And one of the things that I feel is often sort of bypassed is this after. Joanne has always encouraged food, whether, again, you're feeding them or it's a potluck and having snacks and just, toasting to good success. But for me, I think that the photographs and the sharing the win and being able to market and merchandise what you guys have done. You may have 5 people that came out or 10, and maybe you have a pool of 100 residents. But by, getting a lot of photographs and doing something with that and thanking everyone for coming out, that also starts to set the stage for doing this work as normal. And our community is doing it on an ongoing basis, and people can get in when it works for them. And the other thing, a couple of years ago, I was running the green waste program with the bins through OES. And I had some folks say to me like, oh, I just can't. I'm too old, or I don't run a chainsaw, and I can't do this, I can't do that. And the reality was I needed folks to sign in people, sign a waiver, help, just maybe direct traffic, tell people, what we're doing, even collect donations to offset the fuel charges. And, for the guys who are doing the heavy lifting, take them water and snacks. So having a support team is super important. I've also had neighbors who never show up at the event, but they'll drop off 2 cases of water on my front porch. So I think it's, one of those things that we just have to accept people for their skills and what they're capable of, and everything helps. So from a work party perspective, it's really important to be organized, safe, and make sure the experience from everybody who's volunteering is really positive. And that's what, gets you your visible win. And then, like I said, not everyone needs a chainsaw. So, when I have them sign up, I use a Google form to have volunteers sign up for whatever the community activity might be. And I break it down to heavy work, medium work, or light work. And then, depending on what the work party is for, I give examples. The light work is going to be holding a clipboard, passing out water, maybe traffic control, so that you've got something for everyone to say, oh, I see where I can help. And here's just an example of one of the kind of orchestrated work parties with some of the heavy work that needed to be done. And you can see that's where the younger folks and stronger folks are involved on that section. So the question for anyone who might be listening to this, if you haven't done a work party before, the idea is to just pick a small project and define it. What is the work you're trying to accomplish? Where is it located? And if it's on a property owner's lot, then you need their permission. So you have to communicate with them. And then how do you break down all of the work into smaller jobs? And then make sure you're going to celebrate it when it's done. And a lot of these things can start small and just you start to get that rhythm and really build up. So let's switch gears now to how we keep people connected and talk about the actual kind of communication that works. I wanted to sort of set the baseline here with where we've been. Historically, newsletters have been kind of the foundation for how we communicate within our communities. It's fairly straightforward, but in today's world, a lot of communities still use newsletters. Some do not, and there's no right or wrong. It's what works for you personally, your team, and what you get, feedback from your community. So this is just an example of how Banner Mountain was doing it again. And what I found interesting with Mo Graver was that they were not only doing a newsletter, which they would email out to their contact list, but they would also print hard copies and put them in bins around Banner Mountain so neighbors could pick them up. So that's, if you've got a smaller community, I think that's actually probably a really good idea. But recognize that everyone consumes information in different ways. And while I know that when I send out emails that a lot of people read them, I get very little reply or feedback. So sometimes I feel like I'm I'm shouting into an echo chamber and just hearing myself talk. But the reality is people do look at some of those and other people don't. I've had people tell me straight up, I don't read your emails. So for me, it's not about, what is the right solution or the right way to communicate. It's more about trying to figure out what the mix is. And that mix is a combination of when I'm looking at the channels, email, Facebook, Nextdoor, flyers. One of the most important things we do are road signs. And the flyers, we post them up on the fences and wherever neighbors gather to get their mail, things of that nature. So, it's not one size fits all. The Wildfire Ready Coalition does have a YouTube channel, and last year I started one for you at Firewise. I've only posted a few things there, but it's the same concept as what we're doing tonight. I'm trying to make, information available to people when it works for them. If they have families or, they're working, they can't always join on these Zooms. The other thing, though, is to recognize the power of the people channel. And, I've got my annual meeting coming up this Saturday. And this morning, I just started dialing on a handful of neighbors who've signed up for my list that I've not met or talked to, and just personally inviting them. I can't tell you how many times I go out to the mailboxes and my 5-minute, errand turns into a half hour because there's 3 neighbors out there. So we're always running into people and baking in time for those conversations. Those are, generally speaking, in my opinion, some of the most powerful because they're supernatural. So I mentioned road signs. One of the lessons I learned early 7 years ago in my Firewise career was that the handwritten signs, there was a culture and history of that throughout UBET before I got here. And the handwritten signs seem to get so much more attention sometimes than the manufactured ones. So again, back to simple and inexpensive. As you see here, using Mo's example again, she has like a big poster board there, and then the white section is something that she will tear off and use the same yellow poster board again for the next event. And so you can reuse a lot of the materials and just customize it with big old fat marker pens, and so forth. The one on the right, this is one of my neighborhood leaders, Kurt. I just love how he literally puts a chair at the beginning of the road and duct tapes his signs to the chair anytime he has something to say to the community. So there's no right or wrong. More examples here on the left. That's actually from Joanne's community, and she has one road. So all the neighbors use her road, and they're a relatively small community, so they don't have to, share a ton of information because they all know each other. They've been doing this for years, basically saying, here's your Firewise community. We're doing a work party. It's time. Super simple. Upper right is an example of bulletin boards. A lot of communities have bulletin boards, and some even have, commercial buildings and businesses in their area where you can ask them to post up flyers. And then for me on the bottom picture is the community Facebook page. It's a general group. It's not specific to Firewise, but I do tap into it because it has 671 members. And so, when I have something urgent and or an event, I will post to that group too. And then just because I just did these, this is what I'm doing this weekend, gang, this Saturday, my annual event. And I actually went ahead and created the banner on the bottom right, the Black Fire Safety Event banner. And same kind of concept where that yellow in the middle is Velcroed on. And I can't draw, I'm not creative. So I just did a messy, here's what the date is, here's where we go. And then the little sign on the left there is what's in the upper left, the evacuation chat. So when we talk about messaging, it's not just, hey, I'm putting out banners. It's like, what do you put on them? And I learned early on that anytime you say evacuation is going to be part of the conversation, A, it gets attention, and B, people will show up. So I'll let you know if it works after the weekend. So the simple message formula, whenever you're putting something out, whether it's a flyer or any kind of communication, just what's happening, why does it matter? We can't assume that people know that. So I always say context is good, in terms of what we're trying to accomplish. What are we asking people to do? Just show up, or do we have a link where we're asking for volunteers? When does it happen, right? So many times we forget the basics. Who should they contact? What's the outreach? And then what's the next step? And make it the smallest useful step. Sign up here, call me, whatever the next step is for that particular activity. The other thing is that there are some messages when you're communicating that bear repeating, and that's a bit of a judgment call. I confess that sometimes I've maybe over-messaged certain topics and maybe under-messaged others. But anytime that you have an alert, one of the things we all think is that, Facebook or social media next door, people post something there and everybody sees it. Well, those feeds disappear pretty quickly. So if you have some actionable information, you may want to repeat that and do it via email and word of mouth, text messaging, group chats, all of those things. So the things that are kind of big picture, impact everyone, I recommend that you not worry too much about repeating it 2 or 3 times, because those are things that are critical either to life safety, or if they're thank yous and showcasing wins and stuff that's happened in a positive way, people never get tired of seeing themselves thanked. So next section, just some tools and tips. The first is that as Firewise leaders, you can do it all on your own, and or you can do a combination of do it on your own plus use the resources that exist. So I'm going to share some examples of what the Wildfire Ready Coalition has developed in the program that is in place right now, as well as some examples of how you can lean on other agencies to help kind of build credibility in your community and also to make your job a little bit easier. So when I talk about the Wildfire Ready Coalition assets, I'm not sure if everybody here has been coming to the quarterly meetings or gone to the website, but in both of those, we hand out and discuss what's happening in the particular season. And then every Firewise leader can use it however they see fit, right? So it can be customized, what's relevant for your audience, choose whatever makes sense. On the right-hand side here is the Greenhorn Firewise Community June newsletter that just got released a couple of days ago. And as you can see, the graphic that they chose to pull down from the coalition website is the red flag, kind of a understanding that, we're now entering into the season where we're starting to get red flag weather, but it could be anything. And the idea here is that you can add them to your meeting handouts. I know a lot of Firewise leaders have been saying, oh, I want that chart or I want this. And they have their block parties and things of that nature. And they're using some of these to kind of start conversations with their neighbors. But the other thing is just customize it, right? You can just, wrap around your community name, whatever your next step is. So the idea is you get to put a local voice on that for your community wherever you are. And these are some examples of assets that are available to you right now. And the idea is that, it's still, we have a little bit of breathing room, not much, for hardening our home and making sure that our zone 0 is cleared out. And we take the angle of messaging some of the same things that you'll see come out from Office of Emergency Services and or CAL FIRE or other agencies, but we're trying to position it in a way that's a little bit more accessible to the everyday resident. So they'll pay attention to it instead of constantly, being hit over the head with do your defensible space. So we're simply putting it into a package that is a little bit more interesting for people to look at. And I'm not going to go through a whole bunch of details, but I do want to reflect back with the green in the middle, the readiness resolution. We've been doing this almost a year now, and this was our New Year's resolution program. And if you take a look at what we were suggesting Firewise communities and all residents do for 2026, create a healthier forest, build for resilience in terms of ember-resistant homes, make sure your roads are cleared, build your Firewise community, and then the first 5 feet. So if you think about if everyone in Nevada County had taken the New Year's readiness resolution to heart, we might all be in a much better position today. So I think for me, the idea is really around the assets that Wildfire Ready Coalition is developing are tools that every Firewise leader and team member can use to have those conversations with their neighbors. And I think that helps. The graphic on the left is actually very timely. It's all about the fire season that we're entering and the risk that different weather elements, humidity, wind, etc., can create in basically trying to encourage people not to make any sparks since most of the fires are human started. And then on the right, we just can't say it enough. The zone 0 and the 5 feet absolutely is #1 priority for anyone who is, still thinking that they haven't done all their work. We want ember resistant homes. We know that in communities where homes are really close together, 10, 20, 30 feet, structure to structure fire is the #1 way that homes burn. So, making sure your home is as ember resistant as possible through home hardening and the 5-foot zone is absolutely critical. So we have a series of graphics that are available on the coalition site that you can access for those and tailor them to your community as well. And last but not least, because Joanne liked this when I shared it some time ago, we're in summer and we love summer and we should. We're going to hear, birds and all those kinds of things and the rushing of the rivers, and it's a beautiful thing. But we also like weed whackers, although not on hot, dry days, chainsaws, and neighbors helping neighbors. So when we think about wildfire readiness, those are the sounds that we love.
Casey, Joanne just mentioned that these assets are available on the Act Now page on our website as well.
Wildfire Ready Coalition website under Act Now. So now I'm switching gears a little bit to programs. So the coalition has also been offering a number of programs, and I just have a handful of examples here. So this was Winter Walks in the Forest, and this was designed around forest health. And we had 7 different foresters and forest experts lead walks for residents to help us understand what to look for to see if our forest was healthy, our trees on our property were healthy, and base some of the basic concepts. The reality here on the bottom right is there's one person here who's a neighbor of mine. And so the idea is, you don't have to just promote these. You can say, hey, I'm going to go on this X program. Join me. Let's go. Grab a handful of neighbors, build that momentum a couple people at a time. The coalition's also working on a variety of other education things, whether it's mulch burning demo upper left, or pile burning workshops bottom left. And of course, upper right, if you've got a great burn pit, you can have neighbors over there. And bottom right is, they say for tax, there's my doggie Maisie, and I call her Fire Dog. But yeah, so, there's a lot of opportunities for people to go out and experience and learn. I just want to underscore the bottom left in terms of burn pile education. I have a neighbor who taught me how to burn. So it doesn't have to always come through the RCD. You can find an expert in your community and host your own how to burn piles. And I have a neighbor who recently went to he went to one of these workshops and learned how to do a burn pile. And a month later, I said, hey, I want to do a demo fire on your property. And we did. We did a prescribed fire. And he literally had just done his first burn pile and let us do a demonstration burn in the community. So getting people accustomed to fire, embracing the idea that it could be good is a pretty powerful tool, and it's super exciting. People love it, and the more we do, the more people get engaged. So the other thing is, when we talk about the county programs or other organizations, the free green waste drop-off and the various events that Nevada County has been putting out. On the right, you can see the big bins. A lot of us have done parties around that. And then the other one is just on the left, where I simply just said, okay, these are the McCourtney days, and just a simple posting. So I didn't really, spend more than 30 seconds on let me forward this to my community, put a little, quick comment on it, and just, keep things going. So not everything has to be super involved. On the right, it takes a lot of time. On the left, it takes no time. And then this section here is what I mentioned about how you can lean on agencies and resources and people who know stuff that you don't. And that's kind of what I've been doing for my whole Firewise career. Dario Davidson was my first mentor in fire, and Joanne is my next mentor. But I've also relied heavily on the first responders. So kind of what you've got here upper left, this is the prescribed fire I just mentioned. We just did this a couple weeks ago in UBET. And I asked Peardale Fire Department, my local district, as well as CAL FIRE, if they could stop by. And my whole premise was if people see fire on a hill, their first instinct is panic. The minute they see the fire engines, then they relax. And by relaxing, then in the middle there, you can see we had a booth set up, or a table rather, and that was all about conversations. And so by having fire as a backdrop, I was able to meet neighbors I hadn't met. People were coming out all day, and it was a really productive day. On the bottom left, there's Nevada City OES, and they do outreach programs to different neighborhoods to build Firewise community participation, and they're happy to, join anywhere. On the bottom right and top, I think this was just this last weekend where the Wildfire Ready Coalition was out at the newly forming Upper Deer Creek Firewise community. And so the point here is we can have them come to our communities and help us message and talk about some of the more detailed sort of Firewise topics. Don't be afraid to ask. So when we're talking about messaging, there's no, like I said, there's no right or wrong. We do what we can when we can. Some communities have a very formal kind of calendar around it. Others just do it ad hoc. But if you just wanted a rhythm, monthly regular updates, weekly if you've got active projects. And also, I think it depends on the size of your community. If what you have to share is relevant to everyone, I think you can communicate that more frequently. But just remember again that it's all dependent on what it is, and you're going to ask for and get feedback, and you can tailor your approach based on that. I would say keep it short. One of the things I've noticed a lot, if you see under there, it says make one clear ask. I see people always trying to shoehorn in things, right? They want to tell the whole story, and I just want to tell a sound bite. So the reality is, we're not in a sprint, we're in a marathon. And it's an overtime proposition how we communicate, and we have to be really patient and just, make sure that anything that we're saying, it's not the whole kitchen sink, right? It's just one little thing. On the right, from a Wildfire Ready Coalition perspective, I think most of you know we're taking a seasonal approach, which does not match the calendar. And the seasons in the Western County are not the same as the seasons in Eastern County. So the dates will, again, be customized to your community. But the idea is there's some general things, a general rhythm that we go through every year, but it's very much weather dependent. And so it's very flexible. So we just put together kind of a standard approach, and then we tailor it season over season. The last piece for communication that I want to emphasize is that, I think a lot of us get locked into sort of what our plan is. And what I have found to be some of the best opportunities to communicate are when we have incidents occur that will get people's attention. So in UBET, we're constantly, we get a lot of fire. And so I watch social media, and I listen to neighbors, and I piggyback on that. So I will, use that as a reminder for maybe why you want to join our wildfire communication systems, our tools that we have, or why we want to make sure our roads are clear if we have to evacuate, things of that nature. So don't be afraid, if it's not you, maybe somebody on your team can monitor those kinds of things. And an example happening right now, there's a big accident on 174 at UBET, and I had neighbors calling me, they can't get home. And this was minutes before this workshop started. So again, what will I do with that? I will use that to say, as a reminder, neighbors, it's possible that a fire could block 174 and we can't evacuate. So what is our plan then? And that helps get me in front of neighbors that maybe haven't engaged in that conversation before. So don't be afraid to look at what's happening in the news or fires and use those, even if they're small. As you can see, there's no big flames in here, as an opportunity to kind of, remind folks of the actions that we should be taking. All right, I'm introducing a new concept here. I think I kind of came up with the front door and the side door concept. A lot of times we talk to people, and I just want to tell them about defensible space, or, hey, I just want to really talk to you about your events, and I kind of go hard right into what needs to happen. But the reality is that, most of us have been bombarded with all of these messages around what to do, and we've heard it so many times. So what I am finding is that if we can come in the side door and have conversations with people about things that they care about, as an example, at my annual event coming up this Saturday, I have the Sheriff's Heart program attending. And that's all about animal evacuation and preparing, for something you care about. If you have horses or goats or dogs or cats, everybody cares about their pets, right? So rather than just come in and say, hey, we have to plan evacuation and get go bags, saying, hey, you can learn how to keep your pets safer. So I think if we can leverage these entry points on the side door in whatever form or fashion, then we have a lot more opportunity to have these conversations and build relationships. And I think that if you attended some of the winter activities that the coalition did. We had a Show Your Love campaign, and we had the Hearts on Fire event at the Miners Foundry. And so, in essence, we were, kind of coming at this from an emotional perspective, and we leveraged art as a way to showcase wildfire resilience. And it allowed us to have a lot of conversations that maybe we wouldn't have had if we just came in and said, okay, we're going to have a Valentine event. We want to talk about Zone Zero. Big gap there. All right, so recognizing that as we're all trying to build a wildfire-ready community, it does start before the emergency. As one of my teachers told me, the crisis isn't the wildfire, the crisis is now in pre-fire mitigation. So I encourage you guys to be storytellers. This is a poster I put together for an event. I was asked to have a booth out in Truckee this past summer, and I pulled together a variety of photos of activities that we've done in UBET. And I just keep, cranking one thing after the next, one after the next. And all of a sudden I put them together in this film strip format. And everyone just stopped and goes, wow, you guys do so much. Oh, I like this. And they'd point at it and ask me questions about it. And I realized, I need to get better at sort of stepping back and telling the overall story before I dive into a particular topic. So I encourage you guys to become storytellers of your community. Carry forward the heritage, the culture, what's important in your area, and link that to preservation. Wildfire could ruin all of that. And then the other one that I've brought forward, if you were on my workshop last Tuesday, I just can't stress enough as Firewise leaders and team members, we have to connect with people one at a time. And the other thing is that, people are going to jump in when it's right for them. If it's not right for them, you just can't force it. You just have to go with it and continue nurturing that relationship and being available for them whenever they're ready. And then the other thing with the conversations is, I have done defensible space visits, home assessments for many years. And I found myself, finding a little impatient when I would hear, oh, I don't need to move this plant or I don't need to do this, for the 100th time. And you have to remind yourself that if you are having a conversation over and over again, it may be the first time that neighbor's heard it. So, we have to keep showing up and keep growing our Firewise forests. And ultimately, the goal, as I said, is it starts with knowing your neighbors, its relationships, have actionable reasons why people should get together, do the work, and help people stay connected in a variety of fashions. And the more people who are part of your connected network, the less that one person has to do. And ultimately, as we go down this path and we look at engagement, and we start to carve out, smaller jobs where people can start to own pieces of it, that will step them into more of leadership roles. So that's what I think makes a wildfire-ready community. And if you guys are interested in continuing the conversation, we have launched a Facebook Firewise network. It's open to anyone to join. And it's designed around everyday conversations and questions, and we just launched it. And so you guys are welcome to search on Facebook for Nevada County Firewise Network and join in. And with that, we'll open it up to questions. Or comments. And just so you guys know, you're probably muted. So Beth is monitoring the chat. And I'd love to hear if anybody, if this resonates with you guys or if you have anything you'd like to share or add.
I'm not seeing anything in the chat, Casey.
Folks, if you want to just take yourself off mute, we're welcome to have a live conversation. I see Terry's off mute. Yeah. Terry, hi. Good.
Hi, Casey. I just wanted to thank you for this. And I really appreciate all that you are starting to funnel onto the website for Wildfire Ready. It's going to be a really big help to us to be able to, share some of those graphics. So thank you.
Awesome. Of course, Terry. Thank you. Susan, I see you came off mute. Did you have a comment or like to share something?
There you go.
I would just like to say that I really appreciate this. And we have a really large Firewise group. I seem to be the only one that maintains it and does everything. So what I'm trying to do is get neighborhoods together that want to be involved. And I found some young people on New Rome Road that want to get involved, and I'm so excited about this because they're all like in their 30s and we're all in our 70s and 80s. So it's really great to have young people like get involved. And I'm going to have them canvass their neighborhood and get anybody that's not already signed up for Firewise to get their emails and their phone numbers and their addresses.
Good idea.
And I'm really excited about that.
So Susan, thank you for sharing. I'll let you know I'm old too. And I have been messaging to my community literally for the last 2 years that I am looking to do a slow ramp down, not a fall off the cliff. And I'm sort of at the cliff now. I do have a lot of younger people that I've been getting engaged, but there's a lack of ownership. I've got 100 people that I can tap into to do something, even run a project, but owning programs is different. And I started saying to everyone, I'm like, if you don't have gray hairs, I'm talking to you.
Yeah, because I have the energy to do stuff. I'm really great at like getting in there and getting my hands dirty, but I'm not great at the technology stuff. And these young people, they're like pros at it. So I'm getting them to like do a lot of the technical stuff that I'm just not comfortable with. And
I agree. I was
Yeah.
gonna say I've had someone in my community who's working on developing an app for our community. I don't understand it, and he's shown it to me a few times, and my eyes roll in the back of my head, but I'm letting go, and I trust the process, and I know that we can, work it out together. And I think it'll help us move forward faster. And so there's also this notion of, if you've been like me, the point person in control for so long, that it's not always going to be my way. I have to allow space for other people to build in a fashion that works for them. Thank you for sharing, Susan. Heather?
We had
Heather, did you have
a Firewise leader that Gloria Novak, and she was 86 when she finally, found someone to take over the Firewise leadership, and it was me because she's my neighbor, and I just felt sorry for her because no one would step up to the plate. So I said,
right,
Gloria, I'll do it, but I'm just overwhelmed, and I'm not her, She was great at it. I'm okay at it.
Susan, we share your pain. I see a couple hands up. I'm first going to go to Heather.
Okay.
Heather.
I just posted in the chat that I look for materials that I can customize, and I have a little bit of a hard time finding that on the thing. And basically, the materials are every slide Casey ever made, because like the second last slide would be a really great slide to address a specific conversation. So that's kind of just one thing. Is I don't know if it's possible to have a drive somewhere or something that we can find some of that stuff really easily. And happy to tailor it for the community that I know and then repost it. But it's to be really effective, you have to be hyper local. And so a lot of the conversation that I hear has to be rebuilt, because it's not, you're talking about local sites that no one over here in Truckee would particularly understand, but the concept is really relevant. Like the concept of this being a marathon, and it's all about connection and letting people come at this where they are, because that's kind of how we get frustrated with our neighbor is, oh, I really love that tree. And then, the fire chief says, but it's ladder fuel. Oh, but I don't want to tear it down. And it's like, we got to have tools to make space for that, but also to allow for new ideas that would over time maybe change someone's perspective on that particular tree.
Is this the
For
slide you were
example.
talking about, Heather?
Yeah, that's a really good one. And that would be like an example of one of the ones where, oh, I just want to go grab that slide and take it, as it is to make a point someday.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's one thing. And then the second thing that I think about a lot is, I think it is.
Oops, she muted herself.
Yeah, Heather, we lost you.
Yeah.
We're hanging on your you were about to say something brilliant.
Sorry, guys. My computer goes into like save mode, not with my choice. And so the other thing is, like, when people are coming in and this is new, there truly is a lot of learning, and some of it is expert learning that we individually won't achieve. Like, it's unlikely that a Firewise community leader without a career in this world is going to have the knowledge of Joanne, for example, or even a forester or a fire behavior analyst. And so, but some people have some knowledge in our communities. And so, like, thinking through what are the metrics that make us a wildfire adapted community helps level set and depersonalize some of the goals and the achievements of the community. Because this, when we do this one-on-one conversation, it kind of comes down to personality types and leadership styles. And I also think that's really hard for a younger community member who just really wants results. So if there's a journey path and then a metric set, I think that might give us some more additional tools to bring people in as, and I'm in the older boat, as the others of us want to hand it over to the next generation.
Yeah, so thank you for that, Heather. Last week I introduced this idea of, goals, strategies, programs, projects, and in developing that, my mind was around where you are in terms of what are we trying to accomplish and how do we know if we're getting there, which is metrics. So I think that, potentially we could do a deeper dive on that conversation. Let me switch gears though. Diane has her hand up. Diane, would you like to share something?
Yeah, first off, I think this is a very great presentation. I'm sorry that only so few people are participating, but that's their loss. I would like to suggest that a group that was not talked about at all are people who are not well, who have permanent health conditions, who are at home. And strategies, they need educated as much as any of the rest of us, especially when it comes to evacuation issues and how to take care of their homes. And this is not an age-related concern. A person could have a child with an ongoing condition. It's everybody, it's humans. And so I just would like to see us talk about that sometime.
Thank you, Diane. That's a really good point. And I agree with you. I looked at this as a broad stroke. We could do a deep dive and dial into a lot of different constituencies, and I think that we should. So thank you for mentioning that. I see that Lisa just came off of. Lisa, did you have something to share?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Lisa, and this is my husband.
Hi.
So I live in a Firewise community that's actually really inactive, and I decided this year that I'm finally gonna do something about that and start being a leader in my Firewise community. How would you have kind of a blueprint for how to create an active Firewise community? Like, we barely have a listserv, we don't have a website, we don't have any newsletters. We've deferred all in-person events, annual events, to like other Truckee-wide events. So there's a lot of room to grow. And obviously it's going to take some time to become like a full complex Firewise community where we have these massive work events, like what would you recommend? Do you have any bite-sized recommendations to really?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And first, a couple things just to level set. So I'm a volunteer with the Wildfire Ready Coalition, and Joanne just dropped in an email. We do mentor and support, either newly forming Firewise communities or folks who need help. So you are welcome to reach out to that. But bite size for me, what I actually, when I started, I was told do something visible, do a work party, and I didn't know what a work party was. And so I asked questions and did a Scotch broom poll. And just with my background and how I pulled it off, I had 18 volunteers and I had community members who'd been up here for 20 years going, we've never seen a turnout like this. What did you do? And so it was just common sense stuff, and then I did a reel afterward, and I don't know how to do reels, and I still don't 7 years on. But I made it super visible and I merchandised it. And we all sat around and had, beer or cocktails or water afterward. And I realized the power of community. And so the blueprint is start small, find one or two people that you feel are like-minded. And it's almost like it doesn't matter, just do something. Another trick that I did is kind of embarrassing. We call it our clown suits. I have a gal who has been with me since the beginning, and we have some one-way roads. So what we would do is we go out with balloons and all kinds of things and stop cars as they were trying to get on the main road, and literally with clipboards and big smiles and say, hi, this is who we are and what we're trying to do, and can you help us? And they'd be like, well, tell me when. So it's intercept. And I feel today that we so rely on technology or digital or behind the screen, we forget to get out in person and, shake hands and kiss babies. And that's my blueprint. And I have to be patient. The last thing I will say that I did right out of the gates that was highly successful is I got certified to be a home assessor for defensible space and home hardening. So what happened there is people invite you into their homes. You're giving them guidance on how to make an ember resistant home. And with that permission, all of a sudden there's a relationship there. And they tell stories years on about what I said to them. And I'm like, I don't even remember their names. But they're, it's absolutely one at a time, one property, one person at a time. So those are off the cuff, my thoughts. And if anyone else has something they'd like to share with Lisa, please do so.
Lisa, my name's Beth. I also work with the Wildfire Ready Coalition, and you may have missed our Zoom that Casey put together last week about forming a Firewise community. There is a Zoom recording of that. Casey, do you recall if I put that up yet or not?
Yeah, that last week was not about forming a community. Joanne has hosted the workshops to how to form a new Firewise community. Last week is around how do you organize and lead a Firewise community.
Well,
it was a little more cerebral, but yeah.
We have a Firewise community. It's just not very, there isn't much going on with it.
Yeah, well, what we did last week, there's definitely some tips and thought process around how to organize yourselves, whether it's just you or you want to bring more people in. So I do encourage you to take a look at that. But we also, Joanne and Terry with the coalition have been having people come through the Wildfire Ready Home program. So if you're interested in learning how to be an assessor or have someone who you think might have the aptitude and time to do it, we can, coach and train you up to do that.
Yeah, I'm gonna chime in just because Lisa may not know this. Truckee Fire Department does inspections of every property every 3 years, and your community is being inspected this year. So every single home at least has a full or partial inspection, and so Truckee Fire doesn't endorse third parties to come in and do this because they don't want confusion, which is great. But what they would love is if more people did full inspections. Now, to get that to happen means people have to understand the value and the benefit, and they have to engage, and you have to have a relationship, which of course, is all the other stuff. But I want to, Truckee is profoundly different than on the west side, and that's one of the differences. Because I'm an assessor, and honestly, unless I'm hired as one of their assessors, it 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 doesn't. We have to all follow the same format over here.
So, Heather, I hear what you're saying.
yeah.
It's not that different actually. So the way I've always messaged that with my neighbors is that you can go through CAL FIRE or Office of Emergency Services and get a formal defensible space inspector visit, which is similar to what Truckee does. We are advisors, and so the benefit to a resident is that we're just making recommendations. Nothing that we're asking them or telling them is best practice is mandatory. And if they go through an inspection, they can be written up and all those sorts of things to do it. So the idea is
I
really
understand
around
that, but inspections
formal.
are not optional here. That's the difference,
Right.
Casey, is that they can't prevent Truckee Fire from doing an inspection. And and Truckee Fire doesn't want assessors. So you
Yeah,
have
I get
a
it.
difficult working relationship, which is really important to manage, because when you have your work party and you want the fire truck to be there so that people come and they're really curious about why there's a fire truck, you got to have Truckee Fire participating with you. and it's just that the program just runs a slightly bit different over here. I've seen both.
Yeah.
And they're both really valuable, and it's important to, again, make space and allow for and find common ground. But
Agreed.
I've really toned down my assessor capability, even though I'm fully qualified over here, because it is perceived as kind of not in line with that's fully regulated over here.
I hear you. And that was just
Yeah. Yeah.
one avenue into meeting residents. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, right? So I do
Yeah,
appreciate that you have to know your arena.
Yeah, there's 100 other conversations we could have around trees, tree health, evacuation, community, work parties. Trying to
Well, let's
over
go.
here. Yeah. So
Let's go there. Let's go there. So
Yeah.
Lisa, I mentioned in the workshop that the word evacuation does get people's attention. And I don't know your community or where you're at, but one of the things that worked for me was starting to build this interdependence amongst my neighbors, that we rely on each other. And there's scenarios where we could potentially be trapped. And do you know what to do or where to go if that's the case? And so once I kind of worked through that, and this was over time, it opened them up to, wow, I really need to get involved because I don't know. So using evacuation and having conversations around, family and pets and safety is a great way to, get folks' attention. And it could even be as simple as in your community, you host a roundtable to talk about evacuation with no preconceived idea of where it goes. I will tell you, I did a meeting with some of my neighborhood leaders, and I said, show of hands, or first I said, what is your evacuation plan? And all of them messaged what the agencies say: evacuate early, evacuate early, evacuate early. And I said, okay, show of hands, how many of you have a plan B? Out of 45 people, one raised their hand. So what that told me was, people don't really have plan B, plan C, plan Z. And there are some realities anywhere in the county, anywhere in Northern California, that folks might be blocked when they're trying to evacuate. So using that conversation is definitely a way to get people's attention. All right. Well, I've noticed we're a little bit over time here. I appreciate everyone staying on. I will just open it up. Any last quick snippets? Anybody have anything? Diane, go ahead, but you're still on mute. Diane, you're on mute.
The Lost Lake Road Steering Committee met yesterday, and we've decided to take the approach of, in addition to doing a door-to-door, hi, I'm your neighbor campaign divided up amongst all of us who are on the steering committee, to be sure that everyone in our area has a face-to-face conversation with everyone who lives here. We're also going to have two events a year. One of them is a social event where we get together and try not to hide anything in the egg salad, but listen to what people are concerned about, and then use that to generate an agenda for a business meeting. So we'd have two, and at the business meeting, invite the men and women in uniform so that we can have them be the ones who talk about the rules and regulations rather than us. And just keep working, keep going forward. So that's our plan.
Thank you, Diane. That is always a good plan. Have conversations that are not always about fire and listen to what comes up. So I will draw this to conclusion since we're over time. These are the websites, YouTube channel for the Wildfire Ready Coalition. And if you'd like to join the conversation on Facebook, please join the Nevada County Firewise Network. And thank you all for coming out tonight. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Talk soon.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a
Very
lot.
welcome. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Joanne. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you,
Susan.
guys. Great job.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.